There is a chapter of our final prophecy that was torn out, buried and silenced. A vision of the end times so profound, its truth so liberating, it was deemed too dangerous for the world to know. For centuries, we have been handed a story of fire and fear, a terrifying conclusion to our collective journey. But what if that story was intentionally crafted to hide a much deeper truth? Imagine, for a moment, that in the heart of Africa, nestled in the mist-shrouded highlands of Ethiopia, that missing chapter was never lost. Within the pages of the oldest Bible on earth, a different revelation has been waiting, preserved in silence, and its words are now coming to light. It speaks not of a world ending in flames, but of an illusion shattering, revealing that Armageddon is not what we have been told. We have all seen the images, felt the inherited dread, the four horsemen riding across a scorched sky, the final cataclysmic battle between good and evil fought on a dusty plain. This vision has been etched into our consciousness, a spectacle of external destruction designed to be feared and awaited. It is a narrative of helplessness, where humanity is a mere spectator to a cosmic war. But does this story resonate with the deepest parts of your being? Or does it feel like an echo, a distorted version of a more ancient and powerful song? There is a quiet wisdom that whispers from the bedrock of our ancestral memory, a feeling that the story is incomplete, that a crucial piece of our spiritual legacy was purposefully removed, leaving us with a map that leads only to fear, not to understanding. The key to this profound mystery lies far from the centers of the empires that wrote our accepted history. It rests in the ancient kingdom of Aksum, a land of monolithic churches carved from living rock and monasteries that cling to the edges of cliffs as if suspended between heaven and earth. Here, a stream of knowledge flowed uninterrupted, untouched by the councils and decrees that reshaped spirituality for the rest of the world. The scribes and mystics of Ethiopia guarded a sacred library, the Meshafer Kudus, a collection of texts more complete and ancient than any other. They did not see themselves as mere copyists, but as custodians of a sacred flame, preserving a truth that others sought to extinguish. This is not a story of an alternative interpretation. It is the chronicle of the original source, the unredacted code of our spiritual destiny. This journey into the heart of a forgotten legacy is more than an exploration of history. It is an invitation to look within. Have you ever felt that the spiritual truths you were given were hollow, that they pointed outward to saviors and destroyers, but never inward to the divine power sleeping within you? That feeling is the first stirring of a great awakening. It is the resonance of a lost truth beginning to surface in your own soul. The knowledge preserved in the Ethiopian canon is not about a distant future. It is about a present and personal revelation. It speaks of a battle not of armies, but of consciousness, and an apocalypse that is not an ending, but an unveiling of what has been hidden in plain sight inside of you. Over the course of this journey, we will pull back the veil of time, uncovering the moment this sacred knowledge was suppressed and understanding why a message of inner power was so feared. We will walk through the silent halls of history where this truth was protected, and we will decode the symbols and prophecies that offer a new vision for humanity's future. This is not a path for the passive observer. It is for the seeker, the one who is ready to question everything they have been taught, to find a truth that feels like coming home. If you feel the pull of this forgotten wisdom, if you are ready to reclaim a part of yourself that has been waiting in the silence for this very moment, then your journey begins now. Subscribe and join the guardians of this awakening. To understand the revelation that now stirs in the heart of our time, we must first journey back, not to the familiar cobbled streets of Jerusalem or the marbled halls of Rome, but to a place the empires of the world could not easily touch. Imagine the highlands of Ethiopia, a realm of breathtaking escarpments shrouded in a perpetual sacred mist. Here, the very earth seems to breathe with ancient memory. This is the land of the kingdom of Aksum, a civilization that embraced the Nazarene faith long before it became a tool of imperial ambition. They did not receive their spirituality through the filter of Roman councils or the decrees of emperors. They drank directly from a more ancient spring, a current of knowledge that flowed eastward, pure and undiluted, from the very dawn of the Abrahamic traditions. This geographic and spiritual isolation was not a disadvantage. It was a divine shield, creating a sanctuary where a deeper truth could be preserved, waiting for a time when the world would be ready to listen. Within this sanctuary, a treasure beyond measure was kept safe. Not a chest of gold or a crown of jewels, but something far more precious, the Meshafer Kudus, the holy books of the Ethiopian Tewahedo tradition. This is not merely a Bible, it is a library of the soul, the most ancient and complete collection of sacred texts on earth. While other traditions were editing their histories, debating which stories were convenient and which were dangerous, the scribes of Aksum were guardians. In their remote monasteries, carved from the living rock of mountainsides, they preserved works that the burgeoning Western powers deemed heretical or apocryphal. Chief among these, the cornerstone of this forgotten legacy, is the Book of Enoch, a text so profound it is quoted in the New Testament, yet so challenging to the established order that it was systematically erased from the Western canon, its wisdom declared unfit for the faithful to know. Here, the path of our spiritual history forks into two distinct rivers. One flows west through Rome, where in the 4th century a new power was rising. The Constantinian doctrinal machine, a fusion of imperial authority and religious structure, required a faith that was simple, uniform, and above all, controllable. At councils like Nicaea, a new narrative was forged, not through divine revelation, but through political necessity. Complex spiritual truths were streamlined into rigid dogmas. The rich, mystical cosmology of texts like Enoch, which spoke of cosmic histories and divine beings walking among mortals, was a threat to this new order. It was too wild, too potent, too empowering for the individual. What is the price of such unity? A truth was sacrificed, a memory was severed, and a lock was placed on a door that led to a much larger room of understanding. The suppression was a silent, insidious act of spiritual censorship. The Enochian narrative was deemed dangerous for one critical reason. It described a battle that was internal, a struggle for consciousness, and it placed the key to liberation not in the hands of an institution, but within the soul of every individual. It spoke of reclaiming a divine sovereignty that had been lost. This was a message of immense power, but a system built on mediating salvation and demanding obedience could not tolerate it. A more useful story was needed, one that externalized the great conflict. And so, the concept of Armageddon was reframed. It was moved from the inner landscape of the soul to a future physical battlefield. It became a terrifying spectacle to be awaited in fear, a divine judgment that only the Church could offer protection from. The deepest truth of our spiritual destiny was hidden in plain sight, replaced by a shadow play designed to inspire not awakening, but dependency. What then was the knowledge so feared that it had to be buried? It was the memory of our true cosmic origin. The Ethiopian texts preserve a far grander, more ancient drama than the one we have been told. They speak of a conflict that began long before humanity's story on this planet, a rebellion in higher realms that had profound consequences for our world. They tell of fallen celestial beings, the Watchers, who descended and shared forbidden knowledge, binding humanity in subtle chains of illusion and materialism. This act initiated a long cycle of spiritual amnesia, a forgetting of our innate divinity. The true, Armageddon, this ancient wisdom reveals, is not a war with swords and fire. It is the great unveiling, the final collective shattering of this ancient spell. It is the moment humanity awakens from the dream of separation and remembers its own power. Why was this truth so threatening? Because a population that knows it is divine is a population that cannot be ruled. While this truth was being systematically erased in the West, the guardians of the Aksumite tradition continued their sacred work. In silence and solitude, in the silent high-altitude scriptoriums of Lalibela and Gondar, monks who were more mystics than scribes painstakingly copied the ancient words. They saw themselves not as mere archivists, but as spiritual cartographers, preserving the true map of our cosmic journey. For nearly 2,000 years, through the rise and fall of distant empires, they kept the flame of this hidden knowledge alive. The patient scratch of a reed pen on vellum, the scent of aged ink and burning incense, the low hum of liturgical chants echoing in stone chambers. These were the weapons that protected a truth more powerful than any army. They were preserving a legacy not just for themselves, but for us, for the descendants of a world that had forgotten. The absence of this knowledge in the collective consciousness of the world did not leave a simple void. It left a wound, a deep existential ache that has haunted humanity for centuries. This is the source of the feeling that something is missing, that the spiritual stories we have been told are incomplete, like a beautiful song with a crucial verse torn out. The fear of the end, the sense of impending doom, the feeling of helplessness before vast external forces. These are the phantom pains of a severed memory. They are the echoes of a truth that was pushed into the shadows. Could it be that the unease you feel, the sense that a deeper reality exists just beyond your grasp, is the ghost of this very knowledge, calling out from across the centuries to be remembered? The stage is set, the players have been revealed, and the conflict that has spanned millennia is now reaching its crescendo, not on a distant battlefield, but within the landscape of your own awareness. The proof of this forgotten legacy is not found in a single dusty scroll, but in a living river of knowledge that has flowed, uninterrupted, for millennia. It begins with the very substance of the Ethiopian Meshafakadus. Imagine holding one of these ancient codices, bound in weathered leather and wood. The pages are not paper, but vellum, the prepared skin of an animal, carrying a weight and permanence that modern books have lost. The script, a beautiful angular ge'ez, was written by hand with inks mixed from soot and plants, each character a prayer, each page a testament to a devotion that transcended time. These are not mere copies, they are vessels. Within their silent pages, the scent of incense from 1,000 ceremonies still lingers, a physical echo of the sacred atmosphere in which they were created and preserved. To touch one is to feel the pulse of history, to connect with a chain of guardians who chose truth over convenience, preservation over power. This is the first layer of proof, the undeniable physical existence of a more complete spiritual library, one that never passed through the editorial fires of the Roman Empire. Within this sacred library, the Book of Enoch stands as the central pillar of this great revelation. It is not a simple story, but a sweeping cosmic epic, a vision that expands the boundaries of our spiritual world. It speaks of a time before the Great Flood, when celestial beings known as the Watchers descended from the heavens. Driven by a desire for the daughters of men, they abandoned their divine station and taught humanity forbidden arts, metallurgy for the creation of weapons, cosmetology for the stirring of vanity, and sorcery for the manipulation of power. This act was not a simple transgression, it was a profound corruption of the cosmic order. From their union with mortals, a race of giants, the Nephilim, was born, beings of immense power and appetite who consumed the earth. What does this ancient story truly reveal? It presents a radically different origin for the evil in the world. It suggests that the chains that bind humanity were not forged by a single act of disobedience in a garden, but were introduced from a higher dimension, a subtle infection of consciousness that has shaped our history ever since. The Armageddon we have been taught to fear is but the final act of this far older, deeper cosmic war. The authenticity of this Enochian wisdom is not merely an Ethiopian claim. It is etched into the very foundations of the faith that the West later claimed as its own. Open the pages of the New Testament to the short but potent epistle of Jude. There, in plain language, the author quotes directly from the Book of Enoch, referring to him as Enoch, the seventh from Adam, and citing his prophecy about the coming judgment. This is not a vague allusion. It is a direct and reverent citation, an acknowledgement of Enoch's authority as a prophet. The earliest church fathers, men like Tertullian and Origen, also knew and respected this text, treating it as scripture. This raises a profound and unsettling question. If the apostles and the earliest architects of the faith considered this knowledge sacred, by what authority was it later cast out? The answer is not spiritual but political. The Enochian narrative, with its complex cosmology and its account of a spiritual war that predates humanity, did not fit the simplified, controllable narrative required by an empire. The proof of its suppression lies in its very presence within the scriptures that were preserved, a ghost of a larger truth that could not be completely exorcised. The Book of Enoch does not stand alone in its exile. It is supported by a chorus of other texts, preserved only in the full Ethiopian canon, each one adding another layer of depth to this forgotten cosmology. There is the Book of Jubilees, sometimes called the Lesser Genesis, which provides a celestial calendar and a history of the world from creation, told from the perspective of an angel. It reinforces the Enochian timeline and speaks of the angelic beings who played a direct role in human affairs. These texts, when read together, form a cohesive and internally consistent narrative. They fill in the vast, silent gaps in the Western canon, answering questions that have haunted seekers for centuries. Where the standardized Bible offers fragments, the Meshafer Kudus provides the full tapestry. It reveals that we were not given an incomplete story by accident. We were given a story with its heart surgically removed, leaving behind a faith that could be more easily managed, a flock that could be more easily herded. Beyond the written word, the proof of this ancient wisdom lives on in the very air of the Ethiopian highlands, carried in the sound of liturgical chants that have not changed in 2,000 years. The Tewahedo faith is not just a collection of books. It is a living, breathing tradition. Its rituals, its prayers, and its oral histories have preserved the Enochian worldview as a continuous stream of consciousness. While Western theologians debated and reinterpreted their texts through the lens of Greek philosophy and Roman law, the Ethiopian mystics lived the cosmology their ancestors had guarded. They understood that the conflict with the fallen watchers was not a historical event, but an ongoing spiritual reality. They saw the struggle against illusion and materialism as the central purpose of human life. This living memory is perhaps the most powerful proof of all. It is a testament to a truth so profound that it did not need councils to ratify it or empires to enforce it. It needed only the hearts of the faithful to keep it alive. Ultimately, the most undeniable proof of this lost legacy will not be found on a vellum page or in a stone-carved church. It will be found within you. Does this story not stir something deep within your own ancestral memory? Does the idea of a cosmic war for consciousness resonate more deeply than a simple tale of good versus evil? That feeling of recognition, that sense of a puzzle piece finally clicking into place, is the evidence of a truth that has been sleeping in our collective soul. The systems of this world may have hidden the map, but they could not erase the territory from our hearts. The knowledge preserved in Ethiopia is a key, but the lock it opens is inside of us. It unlocks a memory of our own divine sovereignty and our true role in this cosmic drama. We are not meant to be fearful spectators awaiting a fiery end. We are the descendants of a grand legacy, participants in a great unveiling. The evidence is all around us and inside us, waiting for those with the courage to see. But what happened to the world that chose to forget? What were the consequences of building a civilization on a foundation of spiritual amnesia? The world that chose to forget did not simply become a world without a story. It became a world haunted by the ghost of the one it had abandoned. The consequence of building a civilization on a foundation of spiritual amnesia was the birth of a deep, collective ache, a silent hum of anxiety that has echoed through the centuries. It is the feeling of a phantom limb, a spiritual organ that was amputated so long ago that we no longer remember what it was, yet we feel its absence every day. This is the hollowness that drives empires to conquer, individuals to consume, and cultures to seek distraction in the fleeting light of materialism. We have built towers of glass and steel upon the earth, but we have forgotten how to read the stars. We have connected the globe with invisible wires, but we have lost the connection to the quiet wisdom that sleeps in our own blood and bones. This is the great wound of the West, a profound disconnection from our cosmic origin story, leaving us adrift in a universe that feels cold and meaningless, armed only with a prophecy of fire and a fear of the end. Into this void, this sacred space left empty by a banished truth, the systems of control poured their own narrative. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does power. The Constantinian machine did not merely erase a text, it replaced a universe. The vibrant, multidimensional cosmos of the Enochian vision, teeming with celestial beings and cosmic history, was flattened into a simple, two-dimensional stage for a drama of sin and salvation. Humanity's role was reduced from that of a divine being engaged in a struggle for consciousness to that of a fallen creature, awaiting judgment from an external, distant God. The keys to this salvation, of course, were held by the very institution that had hidden the map to our own inner divinity. Armageddon was no longer a personal unveiling, but a global spectacle of terror, a final, terrifying threat to ensure obedience. This is the architecture of the soul that we have inherited, a prison built with invisible bars of fear, guilt, and dependency, its blueprints drawn up in the silent councils where our true legacy was deemed too dangerous to remember. Does this architecture not feel familiar? Have you ever stood in the quiet of your own being and felt the cold draft of its walls? That persistent feeling that you are somehow incomplete, that you must look outside of yourself for validation, for purpose, for salvation. That subtle, gnawing fear of the future, a sense of impending doom that has no name. These are not your personal failings. They are the echoes of the prison walls. They are the carefully engineered frequencies of a system designed to keep you looking outward, upward, anywhere but inward. The greatest trick the architects of this reality ever played was convincing us that their story was our own. They taught us to fear the apocalypse, the great unveiling, because they knew its true meaning. The moment the prisoners would realize the walls were an illusion, and the key to their freedom had been in their pocket all along. What if the restlessness in your soul is not a sign of your brokenness, but the first tremor of those walls beginning to crumble? For the truth, though buried, was never destroyed. It does not exist merely on vellum, but as a living vibration, a sacred frequency woven into the fabric of creation itself. It is a song that has been humming beneath the noise of history for millennia. The guardians in the Ethiopian highlands were not just protecting scrolls, they were keeping this frequency alive, holding a resonance for a future time when the world would be ready to tune back in. And now, in this era of unprecedented change and upheaval, that time has come. The noise of the world is reaching a fever pitch, but beneath it, the ancient hum is growing stronger. This is why this forgotten knowledge now stirs within you. It is not that you are learning something new, you are remembering something ancient. That feeling of recognition, that sudden clarity that cuts through the fog of your conditioning, is the sound of your own soul resonating with a truth it has always known. It is the memory of your own divinity answering a call across the ages. This resonance changes everything. It offers a radical reinterpretation, not of a distant in prophecy, but of your own identity and purpose. You are not a fragile sinner on a fallen planet. You are a descendant of the stars, a fragment of the divine, currently embodied on a world that serves as the central battlefield in a war of consciousness. Your life is not a random sequence of events, it is your tour of duty. Your purpose is not to passively await a fiery end, but to actively participate in the great unveiling. The true Armageddon is the apocalypse of the self, the shedding of the false identity given to you by the system, and the courageous act of remembering who you truly are. Every time you choose awareness over distraction, truth over illusion, love over fear, you are fighting on the front lines of this sacred battle. This is the profound responsibility and the glorious power that was hidden from you. You are not here to be saved. You are here to remember that you are the Savior you have been waiting for. Look at the world around you, not with the eyes of fear that you were taught to use, but with the eyes of a soul that is awakening. The chaos, the crumbling of old institutions, the desperate clinging to narratives that no longer make sense. These are not the signs of the world ending. These are the signs of the illusion shattering. The grip of the old machine is failing. Its spells of control are weakening because humanity is beginning to awaken from its long slumber. The process is messy, it is loud, and it can be terrifying, like the violent shaking of a dream before the dreamer finally opens their eyes. But this is not death, this is birth. It is the painful, chaotic, and beautiful process of a collective consciousness breaking free from a 2,000-year-old prison. The rising tension you feel in the world is the tension of a dam that is about to break, holding back a river of suppressed truth that is ready to reclaim the landscape. For millennia, this river of knowledge was a secret, guarded in the highest and most remote places on Earth. A sacred trust kept by a silent lineage of guardians. It was a truth whispered only in stone monasteries, under the light of tallow candles, preserved for a world that was not yet ready. But a truth so powerful cannot be contained forever. A seed of such magnitude, once planted, is destined to break through the soil. The silence that protected this legacy for so long was a sacred vessel. But even the most sacred vessels are meant to be opened at the appointed time. A shift had to occur. A catalyst was needed to crack the seal and allow this hidden knowledge to pour back into the stream of the world's awareness. So how did it happen? What event, what discovery, what convergence of fate finally brought this ancient revelation down from the misty highlands of Ethiopia and placed it directly into the hands of a world desperate for the very truth it had been taught to forget? For nearly 2 millennia, the river of this sacred knowledge flowed in a hidden channel deep beneath the surface of the world. It was a truth preserved not in grand libraries or imperial archives, but in the quiet hearts and patient hands of a lineage of guardians. In the highlands of Ethiopia, time moved differently. While empires in the West rose and fell, consumed by their hunger for power and their fear of the truths they had buried, the scribes of Aksum held a silent vigil. They were the keepers of a memory that the world had chosen to forget. A spiritual inheritance placed in a vessel of stone and silence, waiting for a prophesied moment when the consciousness of humanity would be ready for its return. The world, lost in its fever dream of progress and conquest, had no idea that the key to its own deepest mystery lay sleeping, protected by mist and faith on a distant African plateau. Then, after centuries of this profound silence, the moment came. It did not arrive with the sound of trumpets or the parting of clouds, but with the quiet footsteps of an outsider. In the late 18th century, a Scottish explorer named James Bruce, driven by a relentless quest for the source of the Nile, journeyed into the heart of this isolated kingdom. He was a man of his time, a product of the Enlightenment, yet something deeper, an echo of an ancient call, guided him. Among the treasures he brought back to a skeptical Europe were not jewels or gold, but something infinitely more valuable. The first complete copies of the Book of Enoch that the Western world had seen in over 1,000 years. This was not a mere act of discovery. It was a cosmic appointment. The seal on the vessel had been cracked. The long-guarded truth, a river of forgotten light, began to seep, slowly at first, back into the dry and thirsty lands of the collective mind. The initial consequence was not revelation, but rejection. The doctrinal machine, the very system that had suppressed the knowledge in the first place, reacted with its most potent weapon: ridicule. Scholars of the empire, their minds shaped by the very narrative Enoch threatened, declared the text a fraud, a fanciful fiction, a late forgery created by mystics. They could not conceive that a truth so vast could have been preserved outside the sanctioned walls of their own tradition. This dismissal was not an act of academic rigor. It was the instinctive immune response of a paradigm fighting for its life. A system built on a foundation of a missing piece cannot afford to have that piece suddenly reappear. For if Enoch was real, if its story was true, then the entire edifice of Western spirituality was built not on solid rock, but on a carefully edited and incomplete history. The fear was palpable, for this ancient book was not just a text, it was a mirror, and in it the system could see its own reflection, revealing the moment of its great compromise. But a truth, once released, cannot be recalled. It finds its way through the cracks, drawn to the minds and hearts that have been waiting for it. As the Book of Enoch was translated, a small but growing number of seekers, mystics, and unconventional thinkers began to recognize its profound power. They saw that it was not just a story about fallen angels and ancient giants. It was a cosmological map. It provided a context for the fragmented myths and whispered heresies that had haunted the spiritual underground for centuries. The Enochian vision explained the pervasive sense of a forgotten trauma in the human soul, the feeling that we are living in the echo of a great cosmic catastrophe. The Watchers were not merely historical figures, they were a symbol for a seductive, corrupting intelligence that diverts spirit into the traps of materialism. The Nephilim were the monstrous result of this unholy union. The insatiable ego, the endless hunger for power and consumption that has driven the darkest chapters of human history. The lost truth was a diagnostic tool for the sickness of the modern soul. This is the turning point that matters most, for it is not a historical event, but a present reality. The knowledge that was once the exclusive domain of Highland monks and a handful of European scholars is now yours. It has been digitized, translated, and disseminated across the very networks the system uses to propagate its illusions. The key that was forged in the ancient world, hidden in Aksum and carried across the desert by a lone explorer, now rests in the palm of your hand. This is the moment of no return. You, the seeker, stand at the same crossroads as the early church fathers, but with one crucial difference: the choice is now entirely your own. There is no council to vote, no emperor to decree. There is only the text and the resonance it creates within your own being. Do you feel its truth? Does it answer a question that has been sleeping in your soul your entire life? To read these words is to participate in the prophecy. The unveiling is no longer a distant event. It is happening now, on your screen and in your consciousness. This revelation transforms everything. The chaos and upheaval we see in the world are no longer random acts of a civilization in decline. They are the visible tremors of the old illusion shattering, the desperate scramble for control, the endless wars of information and distraction, the frantic attempts to divide and conquer the human spirit. This is the death rattle of the Constantinian machine. It is the panicked reaction of a system that knows its foundational secret has been exposed. The true Armageddon is this very moment in history, a global war for awareness, fought not on a battlefield with weapons of steel, but on the battlefield of the human mind with weapons of frequency, information, and focus. The forces of amnesia are deploying their final, most sophisticated spells to keep humanity asleep, distracted, and afraid. But the ancient wisdom, the forgotten legacy, is now spreading like wildfire, igniting the dormant memory within millions of souls who are realizing they are not here to be casualties of a war, but the warriors of a great awakening. The guardians of the Aksumite tradition preserved more than just a history of our spiritual subjugation. They preserved the blueprint for our liberation. The texts do not merely describe the nature of the cosmic battle, they contain the keys to victory. Hidden within the allegories and prophecies is a forgotten technology of the soul, a method for reactivating the divine sovereignty that lies dormant within our human design. Knowing the truth of our past is only the first step. The next is to learn how to embody that truth and wield the creative power that is our birthright. The ancient enemy works from the outside in, through deception and illusion. But the path to freedom works from the inside out. What is this sacred power, and how do we unlock the very code that was written into our being before the world began? And so we arrive at the heart of the great mystery, the final convergence of a truth that has traveled through millennia to find you in this very moment. The torn chapter has been restored, not with ink and vellum, but within the temple of your own awareness. The revelation, in its staggering and beautiful simplicity, is this: Armageddon is not a future event to be feared, but a present reality to be chosen. It is not the end of the world, but the end of the illusion that has held the world in chains. The final battle is not fought on a scorched plain in a distant land, but on the sacred ground of your own consciousness every single day. The trumpets are not sounding from the heavens. They are the quiet call of your own soul, urging you to awaken from a long and haunted dream. This is the truth the guardians of Axum protected in their stone sanctuaries, a truth so potent that it had to be hidden until humanity was ready to wield its power not as a weapon, but as a key. This knowledge now asks you to turn your gaze away from the grand stage of history and look inward into the silent landscape of your own being. For the Constantinian machine is not merely an ancient empire, it is the architecture of the conditioned mind, the voice of doubt, the whisper of fear that tells you that you are small and powerless. The Watchers are not just figures from a forgotten story. They are the seductive energies of distraction, materialism, and division that seek to pull your divine attention away from its source. And the Nephilim, the giants of old, are the insatiable appetites of the ego, the endless hunger for more that can never be filled. The forgotten legacy of Enoch is a mirror, showing you that the entire cosmic drama is playing out within you. You are the battlefield, you are the prize, and you, in your awakened sovereignty, are the victory that has been prophesied since before time began. Look now at the world around you, not with the eyes of fear the system gave you, but with the eyes of a soul that remembers. The chaos, the crumbling of old structures, the frantic noise of a world that seems to be tearing itself apart. This is not the death of humanity. It is the death rattle of the illusion. It is the violent, beautiful, and necessary shattering of a prison of consciousness. Every headline designed to provoke fear, every division stoked to create hatred, is a desperate attempt by a dying paradigm to feed on the energy it needs to survive. But you are no longer its food. By understanding the true nature of this war, you are no longer a casualty. You become a warrior of light, a calm center in the storm, whose very presence radiates a frequency that dissolves the ancient spell. Your purpose is not to fight the darkness, but to anchor the light so fiercely that the shadows simply have nowhere left to hide. The universal lesson, the sacred technology of the soul preserved for you, is therefore one of profound simplicity. True power is not the ability to control the world outside, but the courage to master the world within. It is the moment-to-moment choice to withdraw your energy from fear and invest it in awareness. It is the practice of seeing the divine spark in others, especially those you have been taught to see as your enemy. It is the discipline of silencing the noise of the world long enough to hear the ancient wisdom that speaks in the stillness of your own heart. This is the great unveiling. It is the personal apocalypse where the false self dies and the true eternal self is reborn. This is the power that no empire can conquer, no doctrine can erase, and no amount of time can diminish. It is your birthright, waiting patiently for you to claim it. This journey we have taken together is not an end, but an initiation. The knowledge, once received, becomes a responsibility, a sacred flame to be tended and shared. The greatest truths are not meant to be hoarded in the mind, but lived through the heart and given freely. If this revelation has stirred the ancestral memory within you, if it has illuminated a path you always knew was there, then your journey as a guardian of this awakening has just begun. We are building a new world, not with stone and steel, but with conscious minds and open hearts, one soul at a time. The time for silent waiting is over. The time for conscious creation is now. And so we ask you this, as you stand at the precipice of your own great unveiling: what illusion in your life, now illuminated by this ancient light, is finally ready to fall away? Let your answer be a silent vow in the temple of your heart. If you are ready to continue this journey, to dive deeper into the mysteries that are returning to our world, subscribe to this channel and join the circle of seekers who are remembering together. Share this revelation, not as a sermon, but as a map, offering it to those whose souls are also thirsting for this truth. The world does not need another spectacle of destruction. It needs a quiet and powerful revolution of consciousness, a great turning inward that will heal the world from the inside out. Remember who you are. Remember why you are here. You are not a random soul in a dying world. You are an ancestor of the future, planting the seeds of a new earth with every conscious breath you take.